I've been diving into the Christmas spirit this week. Tuba Christmas happened, and so I was in attendance. Also went to the lights at Cheekwood. I don't know if anyone's been out to Cheekwood for the holiday lights.
Supposed to go tomorrow, assuming it doesn't rain.
So don't spoil them for her.
Okay. So
don't tell her just how twinkly the lights were.
So spoiler-free review of Cheekwood lights. It raised my holiday cheer meter. So
nice. Welcome to the Sex Life Science Podcast, where we talk about everything in life from sex to science. I'm Dr. Justin Gregory Briggs, LMFT, and I have a Ph.D. in Human Development and Family Studies from Purdue University and a Master's of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from Northwestern University. My co-hosts today are psychotherapists and marriage and family therapists Jordan Malone, Hannah Mills, and Matt Samek. Today's episode is on mistakes and the ways we get past them, move forward, and make progress. This podcast is intended for adult audiences and may discuss sensitive topics that are not suitable for all listeners. The content of this podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. We aim to help you make informed decisions based on evidence-based practices, sound theory, and research. However, remember that science is continually evolving, and individual experiences can vary widely. In any discussions of our clinical work, we maintain strict confidentiality and ethics, using only altered or hypothetical case examples. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for medical, mental health, or relationship care, and we encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for personalized treatment. All right, let's talk about mistakes. We have conversations about mistakes literally every day, all day. What are the ways people tend to respond to and talk about their mistakes?
we will probably all agree that most clients are really hard on themselves in regards to mistakes, to the point of maybe some self-deprecation.
At the very least, many clients are.
Sure, yeah. I think about the language that people use or some of the thoughts that we don't see that are happening when someone's making a mistake or thinking about a mistake, how hard someone is on themselves.
Or others, the flip side of somebody who's being really hard on themselves is they're coming in talking about other people's mistakes. They have a backlog. Think about couple therapy. My spouse makes this mistake, this mistake. They're just loaded up with those. And then I'll ask, like, what are your contributions to the problems in the relationship? They got nothing.
I get a lot of talk about wasted time, that mistakes end up being chalked up to wasted time, and that somehow they were supposed to know how it was going to go before they did whatever behavior or action it was.
Oh, yeah, the future tellers. I should have known that this was going to be the case before I was ever taught or had experience with said mistake.
Or had any element of control in said situation.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, is the word should comes up a lot when we're talking about mistakes. Maybe the word mistake may not be said, but I should have done this and I should have done that, or I should not have done this and should not have done that. Or even in relation to other people, they should have just known not to do that.
Yeah, the should word. That sense of ought. I should have done this. I ought to have done that. Too often, I think we don't realize that until it's hindsight. I think very few people actually knowingly screw up their lives or knowingly screw up their relationships. It's not like, I'm going to consciously make this bad decision that I'm going to call a mistake later.
A lot of times they will attach their confidence or self-esteem or maybe even worth to what they've done. So that's in itself maybe something that you should not do. Because you can externalize, you aren't that. You've behaved in that way, but you yourself aren't that behavior.
That's not the whole summation of who you are.
Absolutely.
You're not just your mistakes. You're also your highlight reel.
That's good.
That's not what we hear most of the time.
No. I didn't walk into this career having a line like that. I had to learn it. Our brains are hardwired to remember the negative things more powerfully than the positive things. I think a lot of times people talk about their mistakes disproportionately, either their mistakes or somebody else's mistake, rather than looking at the strengths that are there and the highlights of the client in the room or maybe the person they're in a relationship with.
I think there's like a big push in culture right now that I think started out of good intention of wanting to be more vulnerable and open and take people off pedestals, but has now switched, especially in the parenting world at least, to let's only talk about the ways I'm not perfect. Let's only talk about the ways I've screwed up because that makes me more human. And I think that there is a space for that. But I think if we don't balance that with the things that we're proud of and the wins that we see, then we're just beating ourselves up.
Well, and research shows that if we're going to have really any chance at happiness, we're going to have to be deliberately and overwhelmingly positive in thought, word, and action, and at least a 5-to-1 positive to negative interaction ratio. Yeah, there's a place to talk about our mistakes, but let's keep in mind the positivity too.
Totally.
I've talked about this story recently, but I recently had a moment, one of those moments, you know.
A mistake moment?
A mistake moment.
Okay.
Where basically I was moving too fast under a stressful moment, was backing out of my garage and had not fully closed the door. The driver's side door, and hit reverse pretty quickly. And so slammed the door into like the track for the garage and just completely bent it. I had a whirlwind moment of just like, wait, what just happened? What did I just do? And I caught myself in this moment of I'm about to be really angry at me, and because I'm the only one.
There's no one else to blame.
There's no one else to blame.
The garage rail didn't move. It was there the whole time.
No, there was nothing to blame. It was all my mistake, right?
Yeah.
I was sort of on the precipice of this moment of I'm about to be so self-deprecating and so like, I can't, you dummy. Like, I cannot believe you did this. Like all of that messaging that comes in, that's like how incompetent, how this and that. And I caught myself and was able to say, hold on, what's the context in which I made this mistake? If I slow down and think about it, I was moving too fast. I was stressed. I was under a time crunch. All of these factors where I can point to the reasons why the mistake was made. I'm finding the specific factors rather than there's something wrong with me that I made that mistake. Which I very easily was almost slipping into the sense of must be something off about me that I made.
Well, and it was your fault.
Yeah.
But there was other things that softened yourself.
Yes.
Towards yourself, it sounds like.
But it's one of those moments, and I talk with clients about this a lot, where I almost put this label on myself because of that mistake. Like, I'm a dumb person, or I'm incompetent, or I'm less of a man because I, did this.
Because smart men never get in auto accidents.
Right.
I believe the correct answer was that men are the best drivers. I hear that a lot.
Who said? Well, not from me. You would not hear that from Matt or me. I will say that. I did the exact same thing you did, Matt, in the Institute parking garage. You know how they have those concrete poles that they're kind of weirdly placed in some of those on the downstairs lot? I was backing out and I just heard just barely touched it. And I was like, oh, crud. And moving out, these cars nowadays, they're basically built to disintegrate and to dissipate all energy. That little when I tried to move the other direction, just ripped the entire front bumper off my car. And you should have seen me driving down through the music circle with I had taped the bumper off, trying to get it to my body shop. It was a very humbling moment. But I had to say that I'm like, how come I couldn't see the stationary concrete column that I parked right next to? And it is tempting to make that turn into a beat yourself up moment.
Yes.
Beyond just accepting responsibility, which I think we'd all agree is an important part. But there's a difference between accepting responsibility and then beating yourself up for it.
Right.
I made a mistake actually this morning in a workout class. I usually carry a Stanley water cup, and mine doesn't have the spill proof that it would go.
Oh no.
Spill proof.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. So we're working out. I moved my mat and I didn't actually realize that my Stanley actually doubled over.
Oh no.
And so I see a lot of water. It's 40 ounces worth of water. So 20 of it was gone. And so we're in the middle of doing a workout class and I'm realizing there's all this water here. So not only did I make a mistake, I was the things what I was telling myself was, I'm embarrassed. How could I do this? I should have known not to put my Stanley there. I should have known not to put my mat right there. And now I have to inconvenience other people by not like moving the zone or having someone else come help me. And now I feel guilt for making this simple mistake.
Yeah. The should again.
Yeah.
You got the should record starts playing over and over in your head.
Yeah. A common one I'm making right now, I say making because I'm trying to learn, but it is a difficult process these days. I have an almost 2-year-old who is very much in the I do it phase. And I am very used to our morning routine. That is, I get her dressed and I change the diaper and I put her shoes on. And if I do it, it takes about a minute and a half. If she does it,
it's 42 minutes. Yes.
And I am not leaving enough time for the appropriate developmental task of her trying to put these things on herself.
You almost said, like, is it worth me teaching my daughter how to dress herself if it takes 40 extra minutes?
A question
to do
I ask every day.
Yeah, I've been there.
Every day. And so then I get down there and we need to leave in 5 minutes because we're going somewhere, or we're dropping her off somewhere, and I'm trying to put her on and she is screaming in actual tantrums that I don't even love that word, but that is what is happening. Yeah. And I'm sitting here going, I did this. I did not recognize what stage she is in. I did not plan appropriately. As frustrated as I am with what's happening, I don't get to be mad at her. Because this is borderline appropriate.
Well, because your daughter's how old?
She'll be 2 next month.
Yeah, it's developmentally appropriate for a 2-year-old to behave that way. And then parents do share a responsibility over their 2-year-old that they don't share over, say, their co-parent or spouse or partner. You're probably taking a lot more responsibility for the tantrum of your 2-year-old there than you would if your husband threw a tantrum for whatever reason, because he's an adult.
Right.
And we judge those situations a little differently.
Totally.
But when we allow these mistakes to define who we are, we can't get past them. We're stuck there. What's that like when we see that?
I think it just is the definition of shame.
I am something wrong. Not I did something bad or I made a mistake. I am something bad.
I think we talk a lot about what you look for, you find. So if we are operating out of this belief that we are bad or wrong, we continue to see the ways that we have done things that are bad or wrong and perpetuate that. And that is such a difficult space, a heavy space to live in.
Yeah. Such an anchor that you're carrying around with you.
You can tell even in body language.
Absolutely.
When somebody is living an experience of shame, they're not walking tall, they're not smiling, making eye contact with people in the hallway.
You see it in the room.
Exactly. A lot of times they're hiding.
Or they're just, their shoulders are slumped and they look so much smaller in the therapy room. They're on the couch and they're just kind of bent in on themselves. It's almost like that mistake is that anchor or weight. Like these clothes are heavy, like chainmail, just holding them still and heavy in that seat.
And even the language that they use is apologetic, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Like everything is like their fault almost. So they're apologetic, even in session. I'm sorry, I should have done. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Making things mistakes that aren't even mistakes then.
Yeah.
You're so identified as this flawed, mistake-filled person that you end up apologizing for things that are just normal.
It sounds like when we're thinking about the weight of these mistakes, I like to think about that weight is almost keeping us stuck maybe in the past. Like we're stuck in that moment of the mistake or stuck in the feeling that we had when we made that mistake. And whether that's a mistake we made that just hurts us or a mistake that we made that hurts others, right?
Yeah.
That guilt that can come in that is appropriate to feel guilt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, guilt is a good feeling when you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
It keeps you accountable. It says, I did something wrong. If you've done something wrong and you don't feel guilt, that's a problem.
Right.
There's some personality disorders that are associated with that, that we don't want our clients to have. But when you're feeling guilty for something that wasn't wrong, or that guilt turns into shame.
Right. So how do we move forward? I think that's something that we talk about a lot in the therapy room is when does that guilt become... When does it transition into shame or transition into something that just keeps us stuck in these moments where I feel like I can't move forward or I feel like I haven't grown from that point? I think that's something I look at a lot is when we feel guilt or regret about these past moments, are they just things that we lock away and never talk about and we hide that piece of our life from everyone.
Yeah.
But then what do we miss out on is looking at that and looking at the context in which that situation happened or that mistake happened. How have I grown as a person since then?
Yeah.
Right? Are there things I could pick up on like that? I certainly find that there's a lot of pieces of growth that when clients come in talking about a mistake, let's see all the ways that you've grown and changed since then.
That maybe they're not even aware of.
Right.
It sounds like a big piece of this, what keeps you stuck in mistakes then, is the way you're looking at it in your mind and the story you're telling yourself about it.
Yeah.
Is it the I'm a loser story? I'm a failure story? Or is it I should feel guilty because maybe I treated somebody wrong, I made a mistake or and hurt somebody, or just back into a pole like you and I have done in our vehicles. Does that mean we're a bad driver? Or is that just a moment where we weren't the best driver that we could be?
And Matt brought up a good point in that story. He said he recognized there was a point that he had a choice, that he could go, okay, there were a lot of things. I didn't give myself enough time. I'd been rushing. I was distracted. And that's what led to this. And this mistake is unfortunate, but it is just that. It's a mistake. He had the choice to do that, or he had the choice to go, you idiot. Like, look at what you've done. You've ruined something else. You know, you had that choice.
That spiral of negative self-talk.
And I think a lot of our clients come to us and they aren't able to recognize that point yet. And so a lot of the work in therapy becomes the self-awareness to go, oh, I actually am at a place where I get to choose. And that my instinct, my tendency, the pattern I have been engaging in is to go down that self-deprecating spiral that thrives with shame.
Yeah.
But because I've done the work, because my therapist has sat with me and pointed out these examples, and I recognize this is an environment that could breed those types of behaviors, I'm going to consciously choose something different, even if the closest thing to different was, this wasn't my best move. This wasn't my best move. This wasn't my best move.
It's better than I'm a failure.
Right. If the first change is separating it from your identity, even if it's not the most compassionate story, that's still a huge step in the right direction.
Well, and that could be really difficult. One, if you're doing it to yourself. Two, if the people around you are telling you that story.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Sometimes it is just individual level, but then also kind of the messaging that's received from society and from culture, right? And maybe some oppressive systems that were upon us where, okay, excellence is a thing that we have to strive for. And if we have any signs of weakness or mistakes, then I should probably strive not to do those things and show up as a person who doesn't make mistakes and in my best light. I think about the example that I used in my mistake this morning. I was the only Black woman in this workout class, right? And so if I had messaging that I've received that I've also adopted as my own of, I have to be the best at the workout. I have to make sure that no one else is affected by my presence here, then that is harder. And those are the kind of things that we're going to work through in therapy even. Is like, okay, well, it makes sense why you feel this way. Let's also talk about how you individually can kind of combat those things, the messaging that you received societally, culturally, and do you want to adopt those as your own now?
Making sure that the stories you're telling yourself are realistic. Even if a story like, be excellent, be the best. I think it's a well-intentioned story. You hear this, maybe it's from your family of origin or your neighborhood, or maybe it's a coach or a teacher. But if you have translated that to anytime you are not excellent, you're a failure. When it's not you have failed, it's you are a failure, that's permanent. All of us can fail. All of us can make mistakes. All of us can spill water at the workout class.
Right.
When that is a sign of our humanity and imperfection, that's a comma as opposed to a period. That's a pause as opposed to a stop. Whether that's coming from our own internal monologue or the messages that we're literally hearing. Maybe we have some unsupportive people in our social circles or families that are reminding us of the, quote, failures that we are, when really the truth is we're somebody who is imperfect, who is making a mistake, and then hopefully learning from that. You talk about growth, Matt, and the importance of kind of picking up and learning how to respond differently next time.
I think it's hard when people that we really respect or maybe even are a role model of some sort perpetuate that message for themselves. The example that initially comes to mind is like Michael Jordan. And when you hear him talk about his career, he talks frequently of like, there was no option. I was going to be the best. You would not beat me. I will always be the last one in the gym. You will not outwork me. And I think a lot of those are good messages of work ethic, of hard work and how to strive and set goals and keep going. But I think if we internalize those that says, oh, if I get injured, or if I do get beat, or if I don't make this goal, or if I don't get this promotion, or if I don't get this relationship, or whatever it is, then I'm somehow less than. We start to, going back to that self-worth piece, if we start to attach our self-worth.
Well, I love the athletic mindset, which has such a short memory.
Yeah.
And that's why those players and athletes can be so much more successful than other people who try to do that. It's not that Michael Jordan or Kobe or Serena Williams has many faults
Totally.
in her tennis career. Not all of her serves went exactly where she wanted them to go every single time. She doesn't have a perfect ace record on the tennis court. But when you have that bad shot, what do the best athletes do?
Next one.
Next one. I didn't hit that ball the way I wanted to. I didn't make that basket the way I wanted to. I didn't run as fast as I wish I had. Next up. Next one again. That's not the defining moment. You accept responsibility. And that's the other thing I love about these athletes. Your Jordans, your Kobes, your Serena Williams, is these people who are next level. They accept responsibility for their game. I did that, good and bad. But that's why they want to take the shot. And that's why they want to be on center court in the final, because that's that athletic mindset. I do think there's a lot that we could learn in there, because it's easier to get past a mistake when you have accepted responsibility than offered yourself forgiveness of sorts. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay, and it's not necessarily putting yourself back in a situation where you're going to commit the same mistake again, or if you've wronged somebody and they need to forgive you, maybe you have some trust to earn back. So it's not necessarily reconciliation either. It's just saying, hey, I let myself down. I let this other person down. What can I do to learn from that, move on, and make sure that the memory of that mistake becomes a reminder to forgive, rather than the memory becoming an anchor that keeps us tied to that moment of imperfection.
I like that framing of the mistake being a reminder to forgive. I wonder if there's ways that we could continue to reframe mistakes as opportunities for something. Maybe it be forgiveness or to learn or to grow, right? A lot of very powerful sounding words. So growth.
Yeah. Very therapy words.
Right,
Good
right.
job.
But I love that idea, and that's similar to that idea of, are our mistakes just something we're keeping in a lockbox that we never look at?
Yeah.
Or do we look back and see how far we've come? Or what do I want to do with that mistake? Do I want to use it to be better? I think that makes a big difference in how we recover from some of these moments. And talking about labels that can come up from mistakes, rather than the mistake becomes who I am, what about how I bounce back after a mistake?
We
What
all
if that's
love
who we are.
We all love redemption stories.
Yes.
That's why we're therapists. Those are great movies. Forgiveness doesn't erase our past of mistakes. It releases us from having that be the only chapter in that story. We can move on. We can grow.
I'm thinking about the steps to getting to forgiveness, maybe even going through the path of self-compassion, of understanding what you said earlier, right? We're human, we're having a human experience, and we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about the wise Hannah Montana. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone
Miley.
has those days.
Miley.
Hannah.
Yeah. I know I have not seen one episode because that's not my generation, but apparently Ms. Montana had some wisdom.
Yeah. And of course, those mistakes that we make as children, preteens, are very much different than as adults.
Hopefully.
We get a lot of risks and more responsibility involved as adults, probably why we're attaching it to failure or who we are. But being more compassionate to that human side of us. We're going to make mistakes. We are not robots. We're not machines. We're going to make mistakes.
Well, even a belief of what you're saying, I think back to being a kid and like adults had it all figured out.
Yeah.
You know, they understood how the world worked. They all had life plans. Everybody knew what was going on.
Remember
and
when 18 was old? You look at an 18-year-old, you're like, they have got it.
They're
all
adults.
figured out.
Like, no, they are children.
Yeah.
But, you know, the idea that we're supposed to outgrow this mistake behavior. It's like, no, we're adults. We've never been this age before. We've never been in this season before. We're always learning. That's always going to come with the risk of mistakes, but mistakes are often how we learn.
When you have a pattern of really wise decision making, the type of mistakes that you tend to make tend to not be as big. I use this analogy of life like a hike in the mountains. I used to live out west, and I used to love hiking in the mountains. And there would be trails where I tell clients, you're never more than 3 steps from rock bottom in life. So I think no matter how healthy you are, no matter how long you've been making wise decisions, you're no more than 3 choices away from falling off the edge of that cliff. And when you're healthy, it's like you're hiking on this trail right up against the mountain face. So you're almost a full 3 steps from the edge of that trail where you're going to fall off. When you haven't given yourself enough margin, you're walking right along the edge of that cliff. You're not going to be able to enjoy that hike walking right along the edge the way you would if you were just giving yourself some margin, because you might trip. But if you trip and fall and you're standing far away from the mountain edge, you're not falling off that cliff. Giving yourself that margin, living that lifestyle that gives you a little bit of moments for imperfection without it causing the catastrophic. That's really the best case scenario, because you're never gonna go through life perfectly. I probably never had a perfect hike in my life where I didn't have a moment where I tripped over a root or stumbled or had to retie my shoes. Those things are going to happen, but what position are you putting yourself on the trail of life? Is it one where you're at high risk of falling off the edge, or have you given yourself a little bit of margin so your mistakes aren't fatal or critical or so serious? This episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is sponsored by the Sex Test by Sex Life Science. The Sex Test is an anonymous, low-cost, fun, thorough, and entertaining tool designed to give people detailed information about their sexual likes and dislikes, their sexual values, and their expectations for their partner. When partners share their results with one another, they are shown a list of each of their sexual preferences. In other words, they have a bedroom cheat sheet they can use to try to enhance their sex life together. To learn more about the Sex Test, visit www.sexlifescience.com. What does moving forward look like? You've made the mistake. It's time to either get stuck there, and we've talked about that. That's a place none of us wants to be. You're defined by that mistake. What does it take to move forward? How do we move on again after we make those mistakes?
I think about separating yourself from the mistake, right, that we've already kind of talked about. And then how do we heal that? If you kind of already defined yourself for so long, say for years, I'm this, I'm that. Well, now what are you stepping into? What do you have to say goodbye to? I think about the narrative therapy approach, like the goodbye letter. We're saying goodbye to that part of you that wanted to take accountability for who you are, and where we kind of defined yourself as I'm always this. This is who I am.
You're that mistake.
I am that mistake. And you're saying goodbye to that part so that you can kind of welcome in a new way of being. And even in that process alone can be hard for someone if you've identified with that part for so long.
You're overcoming a habit of thinking that has kept you anchored to that mistake. It was trying to keep you accountable. Yes. It's good intentions, but it's an overprotector. It's doing more harm than good. So what I'm hearing you say is you got to grieve the loss of that old way of thinking and replace it with one that allows for imperfection moving forward. You're no longer defined by that mistake.
Right.
I get a lot of questions of yeah, that sounds great, but what the heck does it mean to replace a belief?
Yeah, what are the alternatives?
A lot of clients kind of give me the deer in the headlights stare when I tend to answer that of, don't overcomplicate this. Choosing to believe differently starts with knowing what you're going to believe. Let's craft a new narrative if we're sticking with the narrative therapy approach. But let's find another way to define yourself. What is going to give you worth and value? Where does that come from? Let's find that. And then, as oversimplistic as it sounds, once you find it, it's consciously choosing to tell yourself that over and over and over again.
Repetition.
And I tell my clients to do it when you're not in times of stress. You need to do that, practice that when you are feeling great. When the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, you haven't crashed your car, you let your kid dress herself, you didn't spill your water at the workout class. Yeah. Let yourself practice when things are going smooth. Yeah. Because you want it to be second nature, muscle memory. You want that to be something that's actually accessible to you when your emotions are heightened and the stress is heightened.
You were a college athlete.
I was.
You played volleyball.
That is correct.
Volleyball is a sport, as my friends can attest, that does not come naturally to people. I had a lot of friends who played D1 volleyball, and I did not play D1 volleyball. I look like I did.
Yeah, I was about to say, you could fool many people with that. You can't teach tall.
I'm very tall, and my athletic ability would have probably suited me well. But in the times I played volleyball with my friends who were awesome, I would look really good for one play.
Yep.
And then the next 20, I'm falling over myself because those movements aren't natural. So you're saying that moving on and moving forward is this conscious repetition of things that might not come naturally at first, but just like an athletic skill set, now you have the form right and you're able to repeat that and move on. And you're no longer defining yourself by that mistake.
Totally. And again, with the metaphor, you don't practice new moves in a sport, any sport, but I'm thinking of, my old club. Every single practice, we would start doing these different maneuvers without the ball. We would stand where it would be on the court without the ball and do it over and over and over. And that was even once we knew how to do them. It was to keep those muscles primed, to keep that second nature in your brain so that when it's happening in real time, you don't even think about it. It's happening. You want your beliefs, your thoughts to be like that too. Yeah. But it starts with being aware of where they are. Is where they are truthful, compassionate? Is it where you want them to be? If not, where do you want them to be? Define that. And then we got to practice all day long before you're in the game.
Like you have to know that you are valuable as a human life equally, no matter what. That's what we call inherent worth. As opposed to, I'm only valuable when I haven't made the mistake. I'm only valuable when mistakes are something that I used to do. I'm only valuable when I get the result I'm looking for. All of those are unstable. But if you know in these moments of calm and you're reminding yourself, I'm valuable, I'm equally valuable, which is different than productive. Okay. Value is different than productivity. I don't PR every time I work out. I don't have my best day every single day. In other words, I have productivity that goes up and down, but my value as a human life is fixed and ultimate, just like everybody else is. That's something that you have to practice, just like you did your athletics, just like you did volleyball.
Yeah, if our value as human beings is dependent on us never making a mistake,
we're screwed.
We're in big trouble. Like not just us in this room right now recording, but all of humanity.
But maybe especially some of us in this room.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. When I think about forward progress from making mistakes, what do I value about the bounce back from a mistake? Do I value speaking to myself compassionately? Okay, do I need to learn what that means? We say that a lot in therapy, like speak to yourself more compassionately.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Right.
What does that sound like?
Right.
Can you give me an example?
Briggs and Hannah, you might really be able to speak to this. Sometimes I think about how do we speak to young kids when they make a mistake? How do we correct while also being encouraging and not shutting them down, right? There's a tone of voice that we use. Yeah. There's body language that we bring in. There's vocabulary that we use that is still acknowledging we need to stop doing X thing, but we can do it in a way that doesn't shut down. I invite people to talk to yourself a little bit the way you talk, and maybe a lot of it sometimes. Talk to yourself the way you talk to young kids.
Like a 6-year-old.
Yes.
A 6-year-old who makes a mistake, maybe you have to correct them, and they fall into the, you hate me, or you don't like me. Right. There's this really over-the-top dramatic, hey, whoa. You're allowed to be upset. I love you. I care about you. You're smart. You're fun. You made a mistake. And as a consequence, you're going to get your time out for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, depending on the age of the kid. 6-year-old, it could even be longer than that, maybe 15-minute timeout. Hey, calm your body, slow your breathing, know that you are valuable and that I care about you and that I do like you, even though you've made a mistake. That's what I do with my kids. You probably do a version of that with your daughter, even though she's
I think
younger.
Since she's younger, it might even be leaning heavier on the compassionate side. Yeah. Because she's not even capable of really recognizing that yet.
And she's just 2, right?
Yeah, she'll be 2 in like 3 weeks.
So not even 2. Yeah. These constructs are way past her developmental.
But it is like hey, you really have to listen to mommy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes mommy gets frustrated when your listening ears aren't on. Yeah. And I love you, and you are safe now. Yep. And whenever mommy asks you to do something, it's to keep you safe. When I work with new moms or new parents, I tell them it's practice. for the 6-year-old moment, because at some point they will be capable of understanding that the words you're using do become the words that are in their head.
Something like valuable no matter what is a construct that is way beyond what a kid can understand. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. I want them to have heard that 50,000 times by the time they reach teenage years, and that finally clicks what that means. Mm-hmm. I want them to have, oh, now I get it. My parents have been telling me I'm valuable no matter what my whole life, and now I understand what that means. Are you a perfect parent? Yeah.
Do we miss the mistake earlier?
Yeah. Like, there's nobody who does parenting perfectly. I think about the other day, we had family over. This is actually over Thanksgiving. So cousins were over. My kids were geeked out because their cousins were in town. And so they were staying up a little later. And bedtime for a lot of parents is not the most stress-free part of the day. My son is fighting teeth brushing like a lot of 6-year-olds do. Oh, he acts like it's the most, you'll have a 5-minute or 10-minute argument and it could have been done in 2. It's just maddening. Well, finally get him into his room. His teeth are brushed. He's got his jammies on. I laid down with him, prayed, cuddled, and he goes, I have to say goodnight to my cousins. And I just go, come on, buddy. And I raised my voice. And I had to apologize because I lost my temper a little bit. I definitely raised my voice louder than I should have in that context. So I looked at him right away, thankfully, and I said, buddy, I'm sorry. Daddy lost his temper a little bit. Go say goodnight to your cousins. Because he was asking for something that I want him to do. It was just frustrating because we had already been trying to go to bed for 20 minutes. But recovering from that mistake, giving yourself room for imperfection, seeking to make that your bad moment, like a little raised voice as opposed to a name call or something more serious, that's kind of the best case scenario because you're never going to reach perfection. And if you've made some of those bigger mistakes, what are you looking to change? What are you looking to shift? How could we make those changes? Learn from our mistakes. I'm a big space geek, and recently SpaceX just was launching like the full version of their heaviest rocket. This thing ended up exploding, I think, at some point in the second stage, but it was this amazing feat. Depending on what media outlet was covering it, because some like Elon Musk and some don't, it was either reported as like this failure moment or what an incredible feat. The first time this rocket had ever been launched that far. And yeah, they were learning why this happened at this, I think it was at some point in the second stage of the rocket that it ended up exploding. What are you learning from? What changes are you going to make for the next launch? What changes am I going to make as a parent for the next time I'm tired too and I'm trying to put my kid to bed? Are you telling yourself a story, Jordan, like you were mentioned earlier, that allows you to be imperfect and learn and then make the changes you need to be better the next time?
Well, Briggs, you bring up a scenario too that I'd love to kind of open the floor up to see how y'all handle this in the room. But not everybody is a parent, but everybody has parents. Everybody was raised by somebody. All of our parents were not perfect, like we're saying. And sometimes a lot of those beliefs of I am bad, I am something wrong, I'm always doing something wrong, I am the failure. Sometimes that was not something that was random. That was something that they were told or taught, whether it was overt or not.
There are some terrible parents.
There are some terrible parents. And unfortunately, we see that, in the room. And so how do y'all start to teach someone self-compassion when arguably the person that, quote, should, even though we're not supposed to say that word, should teach them that, did not?
I don't have a problem with should, for the record.
All right, cool.
I should love my children.
That's true. Okay, I like it. Context matters.
Yeah, I should be ethical. I should be kind. I should be self-controlled. I don't have a problem with should.
Hannah, what you were saying earlier about practicing, I'm thinking about a practical way. We hear ourselves and we speak to ourselves in a kind way, in a compassionate way, but then also we're visual creatures as well, right? So maybe putting a Post-it note on our mirror that we see it all the time and every day, maybe having it part of our lock screen. Some of my clients and I identify with being of a spiritual and Christian faith, right? So maybe that's verses that we're going to put on our lock screen, or maybe verses that you'll have on your mirror, or maybe even just affirmations if you don't do verses, like on the mirror that you see every day and daily, so that it does become a practice and a way of believing.
So what I'm hearing you say is part of making changes is practicing these in ways that don't come natural at first.
Right.
But you're getting maybe this visual stimulus or this new routine trigger. I have alarms that go on my phone at 55 minutes after the hour that say gratitude and slow, deep breaths. Therapists, why do I set it at 55 minutes after the hour?
So you get your break between clients.
Yeah, because I should be done with session. And that is a time where I have 30 seconds to take a deep breath. Maybe I just got out of a heavy session and I'm going to exercise some gratitude to help slow my body down, get focused on some wonderful things that this world has to offer. And it doesn't take that long, but that's something I still have reminders because I won't remember to do that on my own.
Yeah, Briggs, it sounds like you're kind of talking about the importance of building in space to slow down and be compassionate towards yourself, right? Yep. Because if I don't give myself the time to do it, I'm not going to do it. Right? No. And I think about, Hannah, kind of what you're thinking about with how do we help clients who maybe don't have practice in self-compassion. I think there's a couple exercises that come to mind that are sort of quick exercises that you can do at home right now if you'd like, right? And maybe you've heard this before, but how would you talk to a friend that's going through a similar situation or has made the same mistake? What type of language do you use?
Matt, you're a failure. And you are never going to get any better. Like, we don't say that to a friend, do we?
Not a good one.
Right,
no.
Right. If we're good friends, that's probably not the language that we use.
No.
I think we often find it's really hard to extend that grace and that love and, that
forgiveness.
Yes. To ourselves. But a lot of us are pretty good at doing that for other people.
I think you're dead on. I think it's way easier to forgive the other than it is to forgive the self.
We've got to practice to get good at that. Sometimes I even shift that exercise into, hey, maybe it's really hard to envision the current person in the room. It's hard to have compassion for that person. I want to get you there. Maybe we need to start a little bit earlier, right? Can we think back to a time, maybe a younger version of ourselves that made a mistake or was really embarrassed about something that happened at school? What did that version of you need at that time after that first breakup, right? And you come home crying because your self-worth is so, tied up in that relationship.
The things I did in junior high that I thought were like either gargantuan mistakes or so important. And I look back and I go, that's sweet. Little 13-year-old Justin Briggs. Yeah. Like what he thought was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too often I find that we've hidden away those memories of that version of ourselves. And I'll be honest, I used to do this about some versions of myself in high school. And I know a lot of us might have those moments where I'm like, I'm so embarrassed to think about that.
Yeah.
I'm so ashamed of how I was. I'm like, that is not at all what 16-year-old me needed at that time. No. I needed someone to come in and put the hand on my back, say, buddy, I'm so sorry you're feeling this way.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yes.
This is recoverable.
Yeah. Like, it will get better.
Depending on how you respond, it will get better.
Right.
yeah, just not automatic.
Right. Come in with the empathy and then the correction, right?
Yeah, you got to treat those emotional wounds first, usually. Connect emotionally with folks. I see you're hurting.
Yeah.
I feel pain seeing you feel pain. I don't feel your pain, but I feel hurt seeing your hurt. I am so sorry. I do that with my kids all the time. I do that with clients all the time. And then you got to offer that hope.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is a moment where, again, now we're back to that anchor. How are you going to relinquish yourself from that anchor and move forward and make progress? The goal of perfection might sound like a good idea, except if your goal is perfection, you're guaranteeing failure. There's very few things that we're going to go through life perfectly. Like, I'm pretty sure nobody in this room is going to pass away not having a perfect no murder record. Like most people don't do the terrible things. Like, I think I'm going to have a perfect record of never holding up a bank. Now, if you're a listener, you've done one or both of those things. I think there's recovery from that. But nobody has done every big bad thing, whatever it is. Nobody has made every mistake. So there are mistakes that maybe you will escape making. And I just use those because those are relatively rare big ones. But nobody is mistake-free in relationship. Nobody is mistake-free in parenting. But if our goal is progress, why is that a more achievable goal? Why do we talk to our clients about progress, not perfection?
Not to oversimplify it, but you can't shoot for perfection if the goal is not realistic. It just doesn't serve you.
You're guaranteeing failure.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're sitting in that exact same position as arguably they started. I'm already failing. My goal is something that is not attainable.
Yeah.
And you want progress. You don't want to just stay where you are for fear of failure either. What mistakes are telling you is that you're moving and you're going forward, right? I think about even in the workplace, some people will maybe stay in their position or stay in what they know because they fear doing something wrong and being.
I won't do it perfectly.
I won't do it perfectly. So don't try at all.
Yeah,
but then you're
so
capping.
good.
Like there's a limit, right, to where you're going to go.
So good, Jordan.
So
I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were, do we play Battleship in here? Do we still play Battleship?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
I don't know about still, but I have.
Yeah.
Imagine every time you missed a hit on a ship,
Oh.
you're like, I'm done playing because
Because there's only 300 little
It'd be a really short game.
little holes on that board.
maybe some of you at home have stopped playing Battleship for this reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I can't do it perfectly.
But that's a game that's sort of designed. You will not get
No, of
hits
course
every
not.
time,
Yeah.
but every miss is a data point. It's information, and you're probably more likely to get a hit with each miss.
Try playing Battleship with a kid who moves their ships around. That's an especially challenging version of that game. I have played that a few times in recent seasons. Yeah. Progress. Don't worry about having to do it perfectly. If you tried something and it took you 100 times to do it the first time, and it took you 99 times to do it the second time, that's progress.
Yeah.
A realistic therapy goal is not to have something that was happening 50 times a day go to 0, usually. It's 50 to 48, 48 to 44, 44 to 42, 42 to 38, 38 to 31. 8-9 weeks in, something that was happening 50 times a day that you were trying to change, a problem behavior, is now only happening 25. Now, I don't want to be doing the same mistake 25 times each day, but that's a heck of a lot better than 50. If we're only 7-8 weeks into therapy, I start to get really excited because usually once you start shedding that weight of old ways of thinking and behaving that were that problematic, that unlike body weight, where that last kind of weight loss goal, those last few pounds are the harder ones, after you've taken something, a problematic behavior that was 150 to 25, usually 25 to 1, 2, or 3, that's a lot faster. So it gets easier the healthier you get and the more consistent you get with this now new healthy routine.
I see that in couples work sometimes where we have those 4 horsemen, the criticisms, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contemptuous language. And then there'll be a lot of that language, in session, but then they'll stop themselves. And I call those wins, right? When they've done it 5 times every time in session, they do it maybe only once or twice, but now they're catching themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the catching yourself after you made the mistake can be improvement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you never even caught yourself before, you didn't even know that what you were doing didn't work.
That awareness sometimes is that first step,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that is a huge win. And Jordan, I like that you brought in couples work, right? Because sometimes, a few of us in the room might flirt with shutting down in conflict conversations, right? That might be an area that is difficult for us. If we are working on less and less shutdown, sometimes the win of shutting down for only 30 minutes versus the whole hour, that is great progress. That's huge progress. Those small steps forward, we have to celebrate those. They're a big deal.
If you want to get better, you do. And it brings more joy into your life. When you could find a win in something that is still imperfect, it gives you some hope and some courage that this is going to get better.
Bringing it back all the way to the beginning, a big piece of this is ownership, right? And so going, I did that thing. I did that thing that I know I messed up. I'm sorry. Let me try it again. Ownership of what happened, giving yourself that practice to do it again, do something differently. That's how you start making changes to those habits in relationships. That's how you get to maintain connection.
Today's episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is brought to you by the Briggs Institute, Incorporated. The Institute is an individual, couple, and family therapy private practice in Nashville, Tennessee. For more information, visit the Institute's website at www.thebriggsinstitute.com. What are you going to tell people about today's episode? What are you going to tell them about mistakes? What are you hoping people walk away with from today's episode?
Accept that you will make mistakes. You can't eliminate them, but how you respond to them makes a world of a difference.
I think I would say that if you are making mistakes, welcome to the human race.
Yeah.
That is all of us. You are welcome here. If you're frustrated by the amount of mistakes that you're making, you want to collaborate and, get somebody in there to help you with that. Therapy is a great place to do that, to assess those mistakes, to find ways to invite some more compassion for self in there. Like, there are strategies that work to help you bounce back from mistakes, and therapy is a great place to work on those.
Yeah, self-compassion seems to be a big theme to go with mistakes. Everybody here has said it. You're not going to be perfect. You don't have to exist in the world where you feel belittled and shamed, especially by yourself. There are other ways of thinking. There are other ways of believing and other ways of talking to yourself that you can learn and you can do differently. It's a much more fulfilling way to live.
Yeah. All of us are going to make mistakes. This podcast sounds so good at times because we delete the mistakes that we make. Our ums and our likes and our and let me say that again. I think we have all had to re-say things that listeners will never hear because we edit it. We want the podcast to sound as cohesive and as perfect as it can be. But that doesn't, don't forget, we're listening to a recorded podcast. If this were live, it'd be a lot more imperfect. None of us is perfect. No moment is perfect in this scheme of life. And how we respond to that, I love how you said that, Jordan, is really important. There's a pathway to a really satisfying life filled with mistakes as long as we're learning from them and making progress. And hopefully over time, we're making fewer of the big ones. Maybe get to the point where we don't make the biggest ones anymore. And our mistakes are very manageable because we have established these healthy routines where we're generally making pretty darn good decisions in relationship and as people. And we've become just this healthy person living a satisfied life. Any other final words?
Nobody's perfect. You live and you learn it again and again to get it right.
Nice.
It'd be better if you sang it.
Yeah. Are you a singer?
No. In the choir, potentially. Not potentially. In a choir, I sing.
Yeah.
But
You got
on my
a
own.
voice made for choir?
A voice made for choir. Like
Nothing wrong with that.
I was gonna say, I've always heard the phrase "po buddy's nerfect."
Oh my goodness.
That is, if you ever become a dad someday, you've got to hold
that's
on
the
to
phrase.
that's a dad joke. Po buddy's nerfect.
I didn't come up with that,
That's
but I live by it.
yeah, yes. That
Is it your
awesome.
motto? Was it in your yearbook?
Po buddy's nerfect.
Let's just say maybe that was my yearbook quote.
Was it really? We'll leave that to be a mystery.
Yeah. I don't want to reveal too much.
By the way, in my memory, you are always, you're fixed in this time point. Like when I picture you at 16, it's this. Right?
I don't believe in growing up.
Yeah, you're the Peter Pan of therapists.
Or you go backwards to the
I'm going to add that
button.
to my Psych Today profile right now.
Yeah, the Peter Pan of therapists. Yeah, that's great. Awesome.